Hello.
Hi, gotcha. How are you? You look like you're in your car.
I am. So
Where?
I'm just going to be on for a short period of time,
Uh-huh.
but I did want to celebrate the ratification of the Treaty of the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons with everyone.
Absolutely. Here's Rose Dyson. Hello, Rose.
Hi, Dad, Meta. Good to see you.
We can all celebrate. I
Great.
just don't have any champagne to offer you. The Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons
Yes.
has come into force. The 50th state has ratified it. I think it's Honduras has
Isn't that
ratified the
wonderful?
treaty, and that's all it
Correct.
takes is for 50 countries to ratify it. And so it's now international law.
Wonderful.
Well, not quite technically, Meta. We have to wait 90 days. So
Oh,
on the 22nd of January, it will become international law. There's
mm-hmm.
a 90-day waiting period. And then we're looking at uh, getting NATO countries to ratify it. So Belgium is encouraging. The general populace, over 60%, are in favor of the treaty.
Oh,
The Netherlands, likewise, the populace is in favor of Scandinavian countries and also Spain.
huh?
We're optimistic that one of those countries might be the foot in the door. And then if we can get one of those NATO countries to sign, then several other countries will too. What happens is that with NATO, you have NATO solidarity. So all the countries in NATO are protesting the treaty at the moment. But once one of them breaks away and signs, then I think that will open up the floodgates, or that's the hope.
Wonderful.
So
Okay.
that's our next step. And so again, we need to pressure Canada. Canada has sort of three options. One is to ratify the treaty, which is what we want. Two is to have a nuclear weapons disarmament convention, which the group of 78 and plowshares are advocating. And CNA and W has also signed on to that. So that's option two. And then option three, Alan Ware's 2020, but advocating to get rid of nuclear weapons by 2045. But a lot of us think that 2045, which would be 100 years of nuclear weapons, is way too long, and that we will have an accident before that time. So we're advocating to get Canada to ratify the ban, or to at least hold a nuclear weapons convention, and play a much stronger role at the non-proliferation treaty. Now, the non-proliferation treaty was supposed to happen in the spring, was canceled due to COVID, was then supposed to happen in January, and now until August or September. Probably the end of August, 1st of September is the new scheduled dates for the MP.
When you say nuclear weapons convention, you're referring. I think there's some ambiguity in this term, because the terminology that I know that Doug Roach has always talked about is we need a nuclear weapons convention, which means a treaty, which means something more than this ban, because it would involve a bunch of specific dates and obligations and steps and all of that. Well, when you say that some groups want us to hold a nuclear weapons convention, is that what you're saying? To get
Correct.
together a group of people to talk about it, or a meeting, or are you talking about the convention in the sense of the language of meaning convention equals treaty?
No, convention does not equal treaty. Convention is simply talking about it. And the problem is that there's, there's the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which has gone nowhere. You've got all these different groups all voting and having a veto on anything. And then you've got the non-allied, non-nuclear countries, which just want to get rid of nuclear weapons and have signed the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. So Doug Roach and the Group of 78 and CNA&W are saying that a nuclear weapons convention would be a neutral area where people can discuss disarmament and discuss verification without looking at a treaty which would be binding. So it's sort of a neutral ground and a stopgap measure to try to get people talking about it at least.
In the past, when Doug has been calling for a nuclear weapons convention, he meant a treaty. And he meant a treaty with more details in it than just a sort of a declaratory thing, but would include things like verification and all of that. And I don't know why anybody would want less than that.
Try to make inroads amongst the nuclear umbrella countries and get them to push the nuclear weapon states, or at least refuse to house their weapons in their countries and various things like that. It's obvious that the nuclear weapon states are worried about the TPNW because they've been trying to get people to withdraw their signatures. So they are concerned. So maybe if we can turn their concerns into a bit of cooperation in our goals, that would be good. If we give them a message saying, look, this has been done for a reason. You got to listen, and you got to start getting rid of those bloody weapons.
I live in Boston, and I've been a peace activist for 18 years, since September 11th in 2001. And so the focus of my work now is for nonviolence and promoting nonviolence around the world. The people in every country want their children to grow up in a safe and healthy environment. I've taken the concept of Gandhi and King and developed a global movement of nonviolence.
Does it have a name? Your movement?
That's the name. My organization I call Global Strategy of Nonviolence because I'm a strategist. But so I've been fortunate to connect with the former Director General of UNESCO, Federico Mayor. He took an interest in the project, and he has connected me to the Secretary General of the United Nations. So I'm very fortunate. And so that's why I'm networking with different groups now, because my intent is to ask the Secretary General to help promote a global movement of nonviolence. And he led the way perfectly when he gave a call for a global ceasefire. He was saying that, yes, we want, if we stop war, that'll affect all issues. And that's the basis of my work and my research, is that that's what I found. So I'm actively now trying to enlist people to join me to help get other major leaders to join in to say, yes, that nonviolence is the answer. That's
on my computer. You're sitting right next to another guy named Philip Bogdanov, who has quite a history working in the nonviolence movement. He was an early employee of the Albert Einstein institution, I guess it is.
I've been out of this for a while. I was one of the founding board members for the Albert Einstein Institution, and before that, the first staff member for Gene Sharp's program at Harvard, the program on nonviolent sanctions and conflict defense. So we were focused on not so much treaties and so forth, but providing people with the practical tools that they could use to defend their freedoms and self-governance, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of seminars at Harvard that formed people that in turn, helped change regimes in South Korea and the struggle in Burma and a lot of the Eastern European countries and so forth, as well as having a particular interest in the long-standing conflict in the Middle East.
The NPT convention conference was deferred at least a year. I don't know whether there was some talk of putting it off for 2 years. And is that what you're talking about next? Okay. The NPT review conference. And that is the next step, huh?
The idea is to have a nuclear weapons convention or conference, which would include the nuclear weapon countries, and it would operate as a discussion. There would not be any treaties formed as a result, and therefore there wouldn't have to be veto power by anybody, but at least you would get the nuclear weapons countries together and talking. And the problem with the non-proliferation treaty, which is now going to occur at the end of August, 1st of September, is that the countries tend to form cliques and veto against anything of substantive nature. And so nothing is getting accomplished with the NPT and hasn't for the last 50 years, which is why ICANN and the 122 countries came together to form the treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons. We have sort of three options. One is pushing ahead with the TPNW to get Canada to ratify. There's openings in NATO in signing and staying within NATO, but signing the treaty, and then hopefully getting rid of their reliance on deterrence. Second is to have this nuclear weapons convention conference, which Canada, or they're trying to get Canada to push. And then the third is to go with Alan Ware's idea of pushing for nuclear weapons elimination by 2045, which I feel is much too long. We'll have a nuclear war before then. So to me, I think we need to focus on the treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons.
I have a question which I was hoping to ask about the notion of a nuclear weapons free zone in relation to that treaty. There's several nuclear weapons free zones on Earth. Why are countries that are part of nuclear weapons free zones not automatic signatories of this treaty? For example, the African continent is under the Africa nuclear weapons free zone, but only some countries within the continent have signed the treaty. There's also a South Pacific nuclear weapons free zone, and some countries there, some territories have signed it, but not all. Why are countries in nuclear weapons free zones not automatic signatories of this treaty?
Well, it's to ratify it, there's legal processes that you have to go through. And so you have to sign the treaty, and then you have to ratify the treaty. But now that 50 have signed, it'll be much easier for other people now to sign on and ratify. But there are 30 countries in the wings that have signed the treaty but haven't ratified it. So those presumably are the African countries. So there's 30 more countries that are just waiting to ratify but haven't done the legal ramifications of it.
That's very interesting. Do you know if there's been any cases of vote trading at the UN around this treaty? Because that's also been an issue in the past with certain treaties and motions at the UN.
Well,
Or is this
that-
one relatively free of that?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the United States this past week wrote to all the ratifiers, the 47 at that time, telling them to pull out of the treaty. So certainly the United States, along with Britain and France, those three have been pushing against the treaty, which means that the treaty really does have a great deal of significance and is important on going forward.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting because the U.S. is a very big supplier of foreign aid to a lot of countries, and there have been cases, especially with small island developing states and other countries, where votes are traded or almost purchased at the UN for different votes and different treaties in exchange for aid and other kind of supports like that. So it's interesting to hear that in conjunction, and whether that they just recently sent out a statement to a lot of countries about the treaty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and your question is an interesting one. Why can't we assume that any country that's part of an NP, nuclear weapon-free zone, isn't almost automatically part of a signatory? Well, you can't assume anything like that legally, but the question is, an equally important question, I think, is, can we assume that the logic of belonging to a nuclear weapon-free zone means that you, in effect, have promised the same things as you would by signing this thing? Now, I think everybody would agree they'd have to sign it separately. It's a separate treaty, but I hadn't really thought about whether every country that's in FWZ could be considered to have undertaken some of the same obligations. I don't know. Does anybody know that much about nuclear weapon-free zone terminology and what you promise when you sign such a thing? I've never really looked at it closely.
I would like to add, with the context of the African Nuclear Weapons-Free Zone Treaty, I'm looking at a map right now, and the vast, about 2/3 of the country on the continent have ratified it, but there are several states that have not ratified it. And a fair number of those are countries like the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the Central African Republic, and the Sudans and Somalia that have not, they've signed it but not ratified it. And I'm wondering if political instability may also impact the progression of those treaties. Also, the treaty was signed in 1996 and came into effect on 2009. And South Sudan is a relatively new country, and it's also a gap in the map right now that has not signed nor ratified the treaty. But I'd also like to hear more about Meta's question, building on the notion of these nuclear weapons-free zone treaties.
Well, you really wouldn't expect these countries that are basically at war and really a mess.
Yep.
It's like, it doesn't matter whether they sign it or not. It doesn't mean a whole lot. But a country that's as a member of NATO, say Belgium or the Netherlands or something, or if Germany, if one of those countries would sign and ratify it, then that would have a lot more meaning, I think, and a lot more influence. But that's a different question from what the implications are of having signed being part of a nuclear weapon-free zone. My guess is must not be very much, because we haven't even, and nobody's even said that it means the same thing. No, it doesn't mean the same thing.
Yep.
As far as I know.
I'd also be interested to hear, does this nuclear weapons-free zone treaty cover fissile materials that could be weaponized? Back in your course, I wrote a paper on the Kinshasa reactor. The US gifted the Zaire at the time a research reactor, and it's now sitting just outside the metropolis of Kinshasa, this research reactor with fissile materials on site. And that's a huge security risk in a politically unstable country. So do these treaties cover just weapons, or also fissile materials that could be weaponized? A lot of uranium from that research reactor just outside of Kinshasa in the Democratic Republic of the Congo went missing. It was stolen, and some of it ended up on black markets in Europe.
The Congo was the main source of uranium for nuclear weapons in the Second World War. So, they have a huge natural supply there. the TPNW is very specific on the things you cannot do. You can't develop, you can't trade, you can't have the weapons sitting in your country. It's I'm not sure about the wording of the nuclear weapons free zones, how specific they are.
Tacoma Park, where I currently live, declared itself a nuclear weapons free zone back in 1983. So
Okay.
I think we have authority to sign the treaties, but
Well, I think Toronto is theoretically, we're a nuclear weapon free zone, meaning you're not supposed to bring ships into our port. If we had a port, I don't know. But this is it's absolutely not even considered in any discussion I know of.
Toronto also endorsed the TPNW, as did Oakville, and Vancouver, and Victoria, and Saanich, and North Saanich, and Cape Breton, and
Halifax, Nanaimo,
Yeah.
Nanaimo.
I have a question also about overseas territories in nuclear weapons. St. Pierre and Miquelon is off the coast of Newfoundland. If France wanted to move a nuclear weapon there, would they be allowed to, or would it be a source of international dispute because it's technically French territory? Similarly, Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean's a joint British and American territory, and they store nuclear weapons and nuclear submarines there. What type of treaties would really govern the notion of these overseas territories where a state may have nuclear weapons in their main territory, but if they want to put them more remotely, how would that fall into place with these treaties?
If France pulled up or ratified the treaty on prohibition, then all its territories and protectorates would be included.
Okay.
I would say.
But
do we know if the UK is a signatory and ratifier of the treaty?
UK? No, it's not. No.
Oh, that's interesting. Yes, yeah.
Oh no, we'd be home free by now if we had that. But I think let's go back to this thing about cities. It's really worthwhile organizing mayors around the world to take a more demanding position with regard to nuclear weapons. So, I almost laughed at the notion that Toronto is a nuclear weapon free zone. Because it is kind of ridiculous if we're part of Canada and we claim to be a nuclear weapon free zone. Ha ha ha. How much is that going to get you? But it isn't. It might not be laughable if, in fact, many more mayors and municipalities to join something like that. As far as I know, it would be neat to think in terms of how we could make NFWZ into something enforceable legally.
Adam, you raised a question of the weaponization of certain kinds of nuclear reactors and so on. How does the recent commitment on the part of the Canadian government to consider small nuclear reactors, I guess it is, for power generating purposes, especially in Western Canada? I mean, that's a recent commitment in their budget. Surely all the cities that have committed to peace should be rising up against this.
That's a very good point. I think Dr. Denton may have some further insight on that. One of my concerns with that is what is going to happen if fissile materials go missing. Russia experimented with a similar small reactor program back in the mid to late 20th century. It was a different class of reactors, but they were called radioisotope thermoelectric generators. Not quite the same as these SMRs, but also small-scale nuclear reactors. They installed about 1,500 to 2,000 of those in the remote areas of Russia along the northern coast and in the mountains area. Over time, some of those fell out of common knowledge for people living around them, and they ended up on illicit markets, and fissile material ended up in places it shouldn't be. They found one component in a bus shelter in Moscow. Another one was dumped in Lake Baikal. Another one was used for cooking of fuel sources in Georgia, and other ones have ended up into the scrap metal markets. So these notions of SMRs, I think we really need a better strategy of what is going to happen to the fissile materials and the leftover byproducts of these reactors, such as casings and other things like that, especially if they are in very remote areas. Many of the remote communities in Canada don't even have functional water treatment facilities right now. How are they going to maintain nuclear technologies when basic infrastructure is not being maintained in a good capacity right now? And maybe Dr. Denton has further insight about potential weaponization of SMRs.
We're all against the SMRs, or small modular nuclear reactors, SMNRs. I think the idea is that this technology is being developed under the guise of civilian use, but will be primarily for military use. All the indigenous groups are against them, so therefore this whole bit about having them be placed on reserves in the far north is a non-starter, because the indigenous people don't want them. So we're basically looking at them being started up, doing the research under the guise of public use, but it's really going to be used by the military in the Arctic, in isolated areas. There's also, sort of at least 10 different designs on the market, and so when you've got all these designs, that means none of them have come to pass and are actually going to really work. So, we don't know whether they're going to work or not. So everything is very much up in the air, but the government is certainly spending the money, giving money to various groups. They just gave 10 million to a group here in Ontario.
Okay. Do you know if these reactors, you say they're going to be civilian use, are these private companies operating them on behalf or on contract to the military and the government, or is it going to be the government operating them directly? I know in the north, there's been a legacy, for example, with uranium mining, of mines when things are no longer economically feasible, simply abandoning the operations, closing up shop and leaving without extensive cleanup. And only recently, the Canadian government, within the context of government operations, only recently finished a dew line cleanup project that cost tens of millions of dollars in the north. Do you know if these small modular reactors are going to be operated by private companies on contract to the government and military, or if it will be the government and military operating them directly?
Don't know.
Mm-hmm. Alexey, bring us up to date about public opinion or government opinion, if you know of any, about nuclear matters. I understand that Putin has offered an unreserved offer to sign and extend the New START treaty for I don't know how many years, at least one, and it's and they were dickering for a while. It looked like last week the U.S. might accept that just temporarily. But then I heard that the negotiations had fallen through. Tell us about public opinion about nuclear weapons in Russia now. If you can give us a précis.
Well, I'm not sure it is anywhere at the center of public opinion. It is not being really widely discussed. It is not one topic that attracts everyone's attention right now. I think that we're trying to promote our profile as peacemakers. We are trying to look benevolent, and we're kind of making it difficult for the Americans to behave in a certain way, to choose a strategy, because it looks like President Putin appears to be a peacemaker by offering this extension, and the Americans are portrayed, at least in the media, as those who are not willing to accept that. Propaganda can capitalize on that a lot.
but it still would be a good thing to do. If the best you can do is extend it for a year until Biden gets a chance to really, take a stronger position, I think Biden will certainly extend it indefinitely, if not, but I'm pretty sure he'd like to strengthen it and do more than that. But how much more is, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Alexey.
Given the difficult situation that we encounter, that the Kremlin encounters on the global arena, given all those scandals, there's been a number of journalistic investigations, very brilliant ones, that show that the situation with the weapons of mass destruction is not so easy, is not so clear in Russia. So officially we got rid of them, but still there are programs underway that kind of go on. And here it is very important for the Kremlin to show off as the most peaceful player, at least among the great powers. And that's, I think, the idea behind it. Again, going back to weapons of mass destruction, it is a big question of how this can be verified, because if we remember 2017, when President Putin was filmed on every news channel, when he officially destroyed, gave an order to destroy the last arsenal of chemical weapons, and then we can hear information about some chemical weapons still being there. It is a difficult question of how we can control this treaty and compliance with this treaty in the future.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, from the Russian side, because if a country is run in the style of a special operation, as is almost always the case with special forces agents, you never know when you can trust each other, at least in the manner that I think Reagan and Gorbachev, two presidents, could trust each other.
Yeah. Well, of course, it doesn't take very much Novichok. You don't need much of that. A few drops will do it. So I imagine that'd be pretty easy to hide compared to a nuclear weapon.
When the USSR dissolved in the early 1990s, the former Soviet states that were hosting nuclear weapons and chemical weapons, does the Kremlin ever track down what happened to those? The Vozrozhdennaya Island in Kazakhstan in the Aral Sea is particularly on my mind. You mentioned chemical weapons. It was a research for biological and chemical weapons facility. And when the USSR collapsed, it suddenly became split between two sovereign states that were former parts of the USSR. Does the Kremlin track down what happened to those weapons in the former Soviet states, or is it at those states' volition now?
Well, for what I know, all the facilities from that island, which is I think now it's not an. It used to be an island of Vozrozhdenia in the Aral Sea, actually shared by Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. Then, as the Aral Sea was drying down, it became peninsula, and then now it's just part of landmass.
Yes.
It's not a peninsula any longer.
And it's a big concern that people are now accessing it with vehicles to cut it up for scrap metal.
Yeah, but I think they took, even in the turmoil of the early 90s, I think they took proper care, and the military took proper care to take all the chemicals back to Russia. In Russia, we have a site which is pretty much known on the Volga River, and it is used for those purposes. It was used for those purposes. I think everyone heard of that, Shikhane. And I think it is the one that could be used right now. I don't think they can get access to any chemicals there.
Did any nuclear weapons go missing in the former republics Do we know if any were stored there before the collapse? I know Kazakhstan had a huge testing site.
They had a testing site in eastern Kazakhstan. It's the notorious Semipalatinsk. It was a huge area, but officially, all these ex-Soviet states, except Russia, renounced. Notably, Ukraine had certain launch sites. I think Belarus had some of them. At least Ukraine did have. Kazakhstan did have, and so they renounced their nuclear status in exchange for. Ukraine did it in exchange for its, in the Budapest Memorandum, for its territorial integrity. I might think that so did Kazakhstan. I might be mistaken.
Yep.
If proper control was performed, that's a good question, actually.
One of my concerns has been the plans for the deep geologic repository at near Kincardine at the Ontario Power Generation, which is a concern of Northwatch and is brought up frequently in this context, and also the Liberals' initiative for small nuclear reactors. I think that waste management is an issue in both cases.
My name is Joseph Shimpaye. I'm based in Finland.
You're in Finland now.
In Finland, North Europe. And I'm a chairman of one no-profit organization called Rich Unreached Millions Worldwide. Our head office is in Finland, and we are operating the projects in East Africa, community development project in East Africa, in Burundi and Tanzania. And our aim is to fight against hunger, ignorance, disease, and poverty, which are surrounding many people around the world, especially in developing countries. Our project, as I mentioned, we are concentrating on training for youth, women. On the side of youth, we just reach the unreached youth of colleges and the universities, and those who have not got a chance to go to school or so, who live in forgotten villages or small town. So the first stage we do train them, we teach them, and after teaching, we combine together with the idea and the knowledge. We try to find out how to create the work so that they can know how to fight against poverty, disease, and ignorance among the local communities who are unable to do anything, which means we do create a small or size project which can help them to know better how they can assist themselves and to grow the community, economy in their communities. Yes, and on the side of women and girls, we have a large number of women. As you know, women are the fundamental of the families. There are many group of women who has no chance to go forward, to do anything. We do try our best as our team just to reach them there, also to share the idea, and also to show them how they can also themselves, how they can help their own children. There are many children who are malnourished. The others don't have any opportunity to work or to do anything. We do try to help them also in that way.
Thank you. Now, I can't remember what has come of it, but there was a conflict going on in Burundi a few years ago. I haven't even heard the outcome of that. Can you, is there peace in Burundi now?
Yeah, there is a peace now. There is a new government in Burundi now, because the former president has been dead last year. No, this year in May, and there will be an election. Now everything is fine. And I was a regional representative of East Africa for more than 8 years. I have been working with local and high authorities in both countries, including Burundi, which mean with our team from US, from there are others from Toronto, which are the missionaries in the one church called the PAOC, the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada. I think you know them.
No, I
Yeah.
don't. I'm sorry.
I do. Yeah.
Do you? Okay, good.
You don't know.
Tell us for Natashimi. We met at a meeting some time ago, and he's now in Canada. But,
Okay.
Yeah, so though they just create, previously they have created the project for two group among our groups, but the project has been ended, but we worked well. And in this way, when we have, for example, a training or some kind of project development, through me and our colleagues of the high and the local authorities, very simple, very easy to enter and to reach people on the provinces, the local towns, the local villages. Very, very simple.
Thank you. Okay, welcome. It's good to be in touch.
Oh,
Yeah.
I just had a question about the political situation in Burundi, but
There is a new president whom we know each other even. I also know among the ministers. Even now we are talking, I am just planning to travel to Burundi and Tanzania by this November, next November.
Mhm.
Yeah, there is peace.
I guess we can.
I am up in Peace River, where Bruce Power from Ontario came and wanted to put in a nuclear power plant, and we had a huge kerfuffle. Those people who were against it really had to do their homework, because the Bruce Power boys, of course, were all just like, this is a walk in the park. And the sneaky beggars came to all the municipal councillors in the area, the whole shooting match. They came to them behind closed doors, got them all on side, so that all of the municipal government was on side with the nuclear power. And so then all of the residents had to inform themselves and pay for Gordon Edwards to come and talk, pay for venues to hold hearings, and it was just crazy times. But you know, they didn't come here. So, but I also think some person from Germany had moved up here, and he said, so they were talking about putting the nuclear reactor on what amounts to a puddle. Like any nuclear reactor in the world is on large bodies of water. And no kidding, it was like a slough. It's like a huge slough. And he was like, that is impossible. They cannot do that. And so we're really not sure what they actually were doing. because it was impossible to have built it where they were talking. Were they just trying to test the waters and see if Alberta was open to nuclear?
My impression is that in North America and most of, Europe especially, really nuclear power is there's not going to be any more of it. It's just a matter of gradually phasing out the power plants that exist. And the only places where they're putting in additional nuclear power plants on any scale is mostly in China.
Maybe I missed something, but we generally said that the nuclear energy is about to be phased out almost in every country, at least in Europe. At a certain point in time, Germany has taken steps to phase out its nuclear industry quite fast until 2022, I think. But what struck me is that there is an opposite process. For example, I watch Euronews regularly, and they had a video the other day that Poland is going to build its first ever nuclear power plant. Well, the Soviet Union used to build power plants in Hungary, in Czechoslovakia, in the former Czechoslovakia, among its satellite states, but not in Poland, because Poland was always considered a large producer of coal. It exported coal to the Soviet Union. They even have a special railway with a broad gauge from the coal deposits to the border, so they can transport it without changing the gauge. And it really has become a problem for the country because the environmental issues are really striking. The air in Krakow and some cities in the south of Poland, it's something horrible. The efforts to make a transition from coal to other combustibles, to change the furnaces in houses, have so far been unsuccessful. The air in Polish cities is by far the dirtiest in Europe. And so they're now seriously considering, they're choosing a site for their prospective nuclear power plant. It will be located somewhere near Gdansk. So it's on the Baltic Sea, which makes a lot of sense, actually, probably.
Can't they use renewables? What's wrong with power and solar? Of course, Poland's fairly far north, but still, renewables are the only way to go, man.
They don't have that much sun, probably, but they have lots of winds. And yeah. I saw on the northern in the northern part of Poland, on the Baltic Sea coast, I saw lots of windmills, wind power plants, but maybe they're not. They do not rely on their capability to build that much energy, because even Germany will give up coal only as late as 2038. Even Germany, a country which is quite successful in that already. Mm-hmm. So there can be several days running when Germany relies completely on renewables. Mm-hmm. Even that country, which has a declining need in energy, which despite economic growth, it consumes less energy than ever before.
Yeah,
even they don't rely on their capabilities. Probably Poland is also apprehensive.
Well, I don't think any power plants are being built in Russia now. Any nuclear power plants, right?
No, I don't know of that. Not
you
that
don't
I
know
know.
One way or another. I have another.
We had actually we have had an interesting project one of the most exotic power plants in the world was closed down quite recently, and that was in the near the Bering Strait. It was the Chukotka Peninsula. They had a weird power plant of Bilibino there, and it only catered for a couple of towns, small towns on the shores of the Arctic Ocean. And now they phase it out, and to make up for that, they constructed an icebreaker with a power plant on board of it, which is called Lomonosov.
I've
And
seen
it
photos
is
of it. Yeah. Uh-huh.
so it's like a power plant which can go anywhere where there is sea.
Yeah.
All along the northeastern passage. So now it's supplying power to some remote areas along the Arctic Ocean coast.
Yeah, I actually found photos of that and put it on our website. You know, we have a comments columns where people talk about various things, and there was a reference to that icebreaker power plant. So I found a picture to put in there. Yeah. Now, one of the things that I find myself puzzled by is that when I talk to people in Russia, I get the impression that there's maybe less concern about global warming than there should be.
Too bad.
There's too little concern in the rest of the world as well. But I have the impression that the conversation isn't even going on in Russia, even though
Not really.
you guys have, you have all this permafrost, and it's such a catastrophic potential that I would think, and you've got cities in the Arctic where we don't have any cities. We have very few people in the Arctic. I would think you guys would be losing sleep over global warming, but my Russian friends seem to be completely nonchalant about it. Am I wrong?
Well, I will be maybe one of the exceptions to that rule, because I'm really concerned, because I see not only the statistics, but also I observe how the seasons change, how just in my everyday life I can observe certain increases in the temperatures. So we don't have any regular winter anymore. It can be like sleet and even rain and no real snow. So I'm really concerned. I don't like winter, actually. I would like it to be like in Paris probably, or even warmer. But I understand that that's not the way to go. It shouldn't be like this. It is detrimental to the planet. As for the permafrost, I think due to lack of discussion in, let's call it, learned circles in the academia and in the media, there's lack of discussion on the point. So people are not so well informed about that. And if you ask an average Russian what he or she thinks about global warming, you will get an answer that's good for us, because we can grow food in Siberia. We can, which is absolutely, it's absolutely nonsensical, because there are swamps. And there is lots of methane under the surface of the swamps, frozen swamps, and this will speed up the global warming even further if it is released, and it is already being released. So it's a vicious circle. You would say that. And if there are lowlands in western Siberia which can get flooded, so we will lose part of, and I will say like 1 million square kilometers of land or more if the ocean level is rising so fast.
Mhm. I have seen a graph showing the amount of the world's carbon that is sequestered in the soil in various parts of the world. And it's astounding to see the amount that's in Siberia. I would say, well, I can't remember, I'm exaggerating this, but it's almost like half of the world's carbon is in the north in Siberia. So this to me is extremely interesting and important, because as it melts, then of course the debris of old rotten food or grass or materials in the soil, the methane comes because the bacteria can start eating this stuff, that begins
Sure.
to melt, and then they produce methane, and it all goes back into the atmosphere. So it's really, really very scary. And I would like to find partners in Russia who are concerned about that. If you know organizations that we should be in touch with to try to work together in some way, I'd love
I'm
to.
afraid it takes a certain political will, a certain initiative from the top tier of the government, which is, I'm afraid, which will not be the case under the current president. All the shores of the Arctic ocean, except for Murmansk, all of them are closed for foreigners completely, and for Russians as well. So we need to go get clearance. A document to get there. So it actually belonged to the military always, and one adverse effect of that was lots of rusting equipment, which is sometimes quite dangerous, because in the islands of Novaya Zemlya there is a graveyard of submarines, nuclear submarines, and so even President Putin got to know that, and he decreed that to get everything cleaned up, and after 1 year they reported that everything was cleaned up, which no one believes actually.
My question is around the geopolitical situation in the Great Lakes region of Africa.
Yeah.
Have you noticed any dialogues in Burundi around the future of the Great Lakes region? The Great Lakes, for example, Burundi is right on the shores of Lake Tanganyika, and it's right in the center of that Great Lakes region. You have Lake Victoria, Lake Tanganyika, Lake Albert. Are there any dialogues in those countries, and that you've noticed also perhaps even in the society outside of the government, around the future of the Great Lakes? They supply a lot of fresh water to many regions of Africa. Are there concerns around climate change and the future of these huge lakes, and what impacts that may have for the future of Burundi and neighboring countries?
Lake Tanganyika now is very, very useful by 3 countries. Number one, Lake Tanganyika is shareable by DRC, Congo, and Zambia, and Tanzania, which means the shipping or international shipping containers which are coming from abroad through Tanzania, Dar es Salaam, India, and others come through Zambia. Both are coming in Burundi on capital city Bujumbura through Tanganyika. There is also investors who are just dealing with fresh water from Tanganyika, and also men are among the investors who are now there are coming from EU, from Russia. People from Russia are investing in the mining and building the roads and some companies.
Mhm.
So now I would like to say that not really in the near future, but by at the moment.
At the moment, okay.
Yes.
Mhm.
Every activities are just be doing well.
Mhm.
They are even open railway from Dar es Salaam
Yep.
to Bujumbura to Gitega, capital city. And then what we are looking for at the moment, together with the government and the local government in the provinces, is for the investors, the true investors who may be interested to invest in different sectors, such as waste to power plant energy, safe water supply, health sanitation, and also agriculture.
Mhm.
And when we are in this meeting, brother and sisters was talking about agriculture and farm. Burundi has 12 million, and among 12 million, 85% are depending on agriculture and farm.
Mhm.
So, which means that we are really wishing to join others and work in partnership so that we can reach more, and just doing together, we can succeed and reach more in many different provinces.
Thank you so
Mhm.
much. That's excellent information, and I'm very glad to have it. I'm very glad you've joined us, and I hope we can stay in touch.
How shall we join and work with you, and what are the criteria and the requirements?
No requirements. You just need to be human and breathing. You need to be able to go to our website, to savetheworld.ca, and that is meant to be a meeting place for all activists anywhere working on these 6 global threats, and you're certainly among them. So I would invite you to enter your comments and descriptions of your project on one of the comments columns on that website. And you can put your photos as well. So I think you'll find it easy to enter a comment. There's a little instruction manual just at the top of each comment column. So enter your comments and put your photos in, and you'll probably get some answers from people who are interested in your work. That goes for everybody. And I hope to see you all in another month. Thank you. Bye, guys.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This conversation is one of the weekly series Talk About Saving the World, produced by Peace Magazine and Project Save the World. Please visit our website at tosavetheworld.ca, where you can sign the Platform for Survival, a list of 25 public policy proposals that, if enacted, would greatly reduce the risk of 6 global threats to humankind. Come back next week for another discussion of a serious global issue.